So think about when you walk past a really massive towering skyscraper in a major financial district.
Right, yeah. Like in New York or London.
Exactly. Your eyes are just naturally drawn to the visible structure, and
Yeah.
you notice the sheer glass, the steel beams, maybe the way the building reflects the clouds.
Yeah, you're looking at the architecture that was basically designed specifically to impress you, to project power.
Spot on. But uh, if that building suddenly begins to lean or sway violently in the wind,
You stop looking at the window panes.
right, you immediately question the foundation. You're forced to consider the invisible physics,
Mm.
the deep subterranean anchors that you can't even see, which are either holding the entire structure up or, well, fundamentally failing.
Because the focus shifts entirely, right? From the aesthetic surface to the actual underlying mechanics of its structural integrity.
Exactly. And welcome to the deep dive, and a special welcome to you, the learner. Today, we're examining the ultimate cracked foundation of Western civilization.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It really is. We are pulling from a pretty dense, towering stack of sources today. Excerpts from St. Augustine's monumental work, The City of God, Volume 1.
Specifically the translation by Reverend Marcus Dodds, just for reference.
Yes, thank you. And our mission for today's deep dive is to explore how this ancient text creates what is essentially the very first real philosophy of history.
Yeah, because Augustine fundamentally reframes human events. He moves away from just chronicling visible political power.
Right, and he redefines history as this massive, invisible struggle between hidden philosophical and spiritual systems.
He's basically forcing his contemporaries, and us really, to look at the subterranean anchors of society, to ask if our modern societies still operate under these hidden belief structures engineered by the elite.
But to grapple with that, we really have to look at the historical crisis that forced Augustine to write this 22-book masterpiece over 13 years. So set the stage for us.
Well, the year is 410 AD.
Okay.
And the unconquered mistress of the world, Rome, has just been stormed and sacked by the Goths under King Alaric.
Which is just, I mean, the civilized world is in absolute shock, right?
Complete devastation. Psychologically, it was like the end of the world. And in the aftermath, the remaining pagans immediately direct their outrage at the relatively new Christian religion.
Because they abandoned the old ways?
Exactly. They argue that because the empire abandoned its ancient gods, those gods withdrew their divine protection and just allowed Rome to fall.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Augustine is facing a profound cultural indictment here. How does he actually defend against such a massive accusation?
Well, he starts by deploying a really rigorous empirical critique of Roman history. He bypasses the theological debate at first and goes straight to the historical record.
Like checking the receipts.
Yes, pointing out the glaring logical flaw in the pagan argument, which is that the old gods had a very documented history of, well, failing to protect anyone.
Oh, right.
He draws immediate attention to Troy, right, the mother city of the Roman people. The Trojans fervently worshipped the exact same pantheon, Minerva, Juno, Apollo, yet Troy was utterly annihilated by the Greeks.
Right, and he highlights the incredible paradox of Aeneas, the legendary founder of the Roman lineage.
Yeah, Aeneas flees the burning ruins of Troy, and what is he doing?
He's physically carrying his gods to safety in Italy.
Exactly. Augustine actually calls them conquered gods. It's this brilliant logical trap.
Because if a deity requires a human refugee to rescue it from a burning temple,
How can a society rationally expect that same deity to provide a shield over an entire empire?
you're relying on a security apparatus that has already been breached, it's completely destroyed.
And Augustine drives that point home by contrasting the sack of Troy with the sack of Rome in 410 AD.
Okay, how so?
Well, during the fall of Troy, the Greeks showed absolutely no respect for the pagan sanctuaries. I mean, the temple of Juno was commandeered by the Greeks to hoard stolen treasure and immure captives.
Okay.
But fast forward to Rome, the Goths, who are these barbarian invaders, they storm the city, but out of reverence for Christ, they actually halt their slaughter at the steps of the Christian churches.
Wait, really? The invaders just stopped?
Yeah, at the shrines of Peter and Paul. They allowed anyone who crossed those thresholds to find true asylum, even pagans who were just faking it to save their own skins.
But, I mean, let me play devil's advocate for a second. Wasn't that simply a matter of, tribal loyalty? The Goths were technically Arian Christians. Couldn't the pagans argue they were just sparing their own religious monuments?
They could try, but Augustine counters that this behavior violated every known convention of ancient warfare.
How so?
In the classical paradigm, a city's temples were the primary targets for looting because that's where the wealth was. The victor claimed the defeated city's gods. Sparing people just because they stood inside a specific building was entirely unprecedented.
Huh. So Augustine argues the pagans survived precisely because of the mercy introduced by the religion they were blaming.
Exactly. It's a massive irony.
But that sets up a fascinating historical contradiction. If these pagan gods were demonstrably so useless historically, why did the highly pragmatic Romans rely on them for over 1,000 years?
That is the million-dollar question.
I mean, were the Roman gods essentially just like an ancient corporate mascot, a branding exercise taking credit for the sheer engineering and hard work of the Roman legions?
What's fascinating here is that Augustine completely agrees with the premise of your mascot analogy.
Oh, really?
Yes, he asserts the gods contributed absolutely nothing to the expansion of the empire. The Roman state was built by the early Romans' insatiable desire for human glory.
Okay.
Their civic discipline, and what Augustine identifies as their lust of rule. The drive for domination built Rome, not the gods.
But here's the critical pivot, right? Because the Roman elite actually understood this.
They did. They knew the gods were an empty facade, which brings us directly to the architecture of societal control.
So the political leaders knew the pantheon was a fabrication, yet they kept funding the temples and mandating sacrifices.
Exactly. They maintained a religious infrastructure they privately knew was false. Augustine relies heavily on Marcus Varro for this.
Rome's most learned scholar, right?
Yeah, Varro was brilliant, and he divided theology into 3 distinct types.
Okay, walk us through them.
First, mythical theology, which was the fabulous, often obscene plays in the public theater. Second, natural theology, which was the domain of the philosophers, dealing with the actual physical truths of the universe.
Right.
And third, civil theology, which dictated the official state religion and the city worship.
So we have theater for the masses, philosophy for the intellectuals, and state religion for civic order.
Precisely. And Varro separates the philosophical truth from the state religion because the truth was completely incompatible with social utility.
They knew the myths were absurd.
Oh, completely. But Varro makes this shocking admission that Augustine exposes. Varro writes that while the educated elites and princes knew the mythical and civil gods were false, it is expedient that the people should think otherwise, even though falsely.
Expedient that the people should think otherwise. Wow. Here's where it gets really interesting, especially for you, the learner, navigating our modern world.
Oh, absolutely.
Varro is describing a calculated deployment of myth for psychological control. And we have to ask, are we really so different today? Look at our modern visible political powers.
Yeah. Do they rely on invisible, expedient myths?
Exactly. Think about political spin rooms, or algorithms curating outrage, or the myth of endless economic consumerism. Are these our modern civil theologies designed to keep the populace docile and predictable?
Augustine draws a very sharp conclusion about that dynamic. He says that by prioritizing civic utility over truth, the elites acted like demons.
Like demons, that's strong language.
Very strong, because they intentionally deceived the public to bind them more firmly into civil society, subjecting them to control.
So the public theater spectacles, all the crimes and obscenities, were actually demanded by these hidden structures.
Yes, to keep the masses distracted and morally compliant. The visible empire ran smoothly because its foundation was an invisible system of expedient lies.
The elite didn't just want taxes, they wanted total psychological capture.
Right, but because the visible earthly state is built on this manipulation, Augustine has to introduce his ultimate thesis, an alternative.
Right, you can't just tear down the building without proposing a new one.
Exactly. So he introduces a grand framework, the city of the world, or earthly city, and the city of God, the heavenly city.
Okay, so let's look at the source codes of these two parallel societies. The earthly city is the mistress of the nations, but what drives it?
It's ultimately ruled by its own lust of rule. It seeks human glory.
And the city of God?
It's a pilgrim on earth. It lives by faith, seeking eternal peace, and it grows silently. Augustine quotes this beautiful classical phrase, "It grows silently like a tree. Crescit occulto velut arbor evo."
Grows silently like a tree. I love that. So while the earthly city is, throwing military parades and fighting for borders, the city of God is just quietly expanding.
Exactly. But crucially, these two cities are not physical geographical places.
They aren't.
No, they are completely entangled together in this world and intermixed until the last judgment.
By intermixed. So what does this all mean for the listener going about their daily life?
Yeah.
Because if they're entangled, How do you figure out which city you or the people in power actually belong to? It sounds like this forced dual citizenship.
It
Like
is.
you pay taxes to a visible country, but your true loyalty belongs to an invisible one.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Augustine says citizenship is determined entirely by what you love.
By what you love.
Yeah. Lust for power versus love of truth and God. You can have incredibly corrupt people sitting inside the visible church.
So they belong to the earthly city.
Exactly. And you can have future saints currently outside of it. The visible boundaries don't match the spiritual reality.
Which forces a radical rereading of human history, right? History isn't just the story of empires falling anymore.
No, it's the story of the invisible city of God surviving the wreckage.
Just enduring the collapse.
But for that invisible heavenly city to actually achieve a final victory, the very nature of time has to support a final destination, doesn't it?
It has to, yes. Because if history just repeats itself, endurance is pointless. The city of God can never truly win.
And this is where Augustine breaks down the prevailing pagan philosophy of time, which was the cyclical view.
Okay, the cyclical view.
Yeah, philosophers like Plato believe that history just loops endlessly.
Just going in circles?
Right. At fixed intervals, the exact same people, the exact same schools, and the same miseries will just repeat forever.
Why would the pagans find that appealing in the first place?
Yeah.
I mean, pagan cyclical time is like being trapped on a treadmill.
Yeah.
You're sweating, you're working hard, but you're going absolutely nowhere.
They liked it because it implied a sort of eternal, unchanging perfection to the cosmos. But Augustine comes along and says, no, you're actually running a marathon. There is a finish line.
Right. He shatters the loop with the concept of linear time.
He argues time had a definitive beginning, created with the world, and is moving toward a definitive end.
How does he prove that the loop can be broken?
He uses the biblical concept that Christ died once. If that unique event happened once, it proves novelty is possible. A soul can be permanently saved. We are not trapped on a cosmic hamster wheel.
We don't have to do this all again in a million years.
Exactly. Augustine actually quotes the Psalms against the pagan philosophers, saying, the wicked walk in a circle.
The wicked walk in a circle. That is so evocative. But how does this shift to linear time change how the listener should view their own personal history and, their own struggles?
This raises an important question about the meaning of it all. Linear time gives meaning to suffering.
Okay.
If the sack of Rome or any modern tragedy is just a point on an endless loop, it's meaningless misery.
There's a glitch on the treadmill.
Right. But if it's a point on a line moving toward ultimate justice, it has purpose.
The struggle actually matters.
Exactly. History has a plot.
Wow. Okay, let's synthesize all of this, because
Yeah.
we've covered massive ground. We started with the shocking physical collapse of Rome in 410 AD.
The ultimate visible skyscraper falling.
Exactly. Which led Augustine to expose the cynical, elite-driven civil theologies of his day. And from those ashes, he built this stunning philosophy of history.
Based on two entangled, invisible cities.
Right, moving along a linear timeline toward a final, meaningful destination. And for you, the learner, this framework completely changes how you read the news today.
Oh, it really does.
When you see political empires clashing or institutions crumbling, you are only seeing the visible surface.
Just the glass and steel.
Yeah. The real story is the invisible struggle of belief systems underneath, which leaves us with a final, lingering question for you to explore on your own.
And it's a tough one.
It is. Think about the institutions, the media, or the political parties you interact with daily. What are the modern civil theologies of our time?
Yeah, what are they?
What are the beautiful, comforting myths that our leaders find expedient for you to believe, just to keep the visible empire running smoothly? And more importantly, are you going to keep believing them?
Look at the foundation, not just the building.
Exactly. Thank you for joining the conversation today, and as always, keep digging beneath the surface.